Eleanor, you don't need to come. This party is for important people. I froze in my own backyard as my son Mark hosted a housewarming party. It was the house I had provided 80% of the down payment for, yet I was not on the guest list. My daughter-in-law, Sarah, delivered the line to my face in front of her family. Laughter and clinking glasses drifted from the deck above, while I stood below like a housekeeper who had wandered by. The words echoed in my head, a party for important people. That night, I began a quiet plan no one would see coming. As I left the yard, holding the small bag I'd brought, I said nothing. I just nodded at one of Sarah's relatives, who either didn't recognize me or pretended not to. In my car, I sat for a few minutes, my heart strangely steady. I had been waiting for years, not for this humiliation, but for this painful clarity. Driving home, the sound of the engine was a steady reminder that I still controlled something. I had imagined this day so differently. I'd arrive early, help set tables, and bring the special salad Mark loved. Sarah would give me a polite hug, and we would take a family photo under the big oak tree I'd planted myself before selling my old house to give them the money for this one. But I wasn't on the guest list. I wasn't part of the family. At home, I sank into my armchair and stared out the window as the sun set. I didn't cry. I think I had already cried myself dry over the years. When Sarah said I called too often, when Mark started replying to my texts with emojis instead of words, when I sent money for car repairs and received only a transfer successful notification. I don't anger easily, but there's a kind of wound that never heals because the person who inflicted it keeps scratching at it with daily indifference. I walked to the old file cabinet in my office, a relic from my accounting days. I pulled out a folder labeled Family, Mark and Sarah. I flipped through the pages, a home repair bill for $2,800, Spanish classes for my granddaughter Lily for $1,200, a sofa for their old apartment for $1,700, and a bank loan I co-signed for $15,000. And those were just the ones on paper. The quick cash transfers and birthday gifts for Sarah weren't on any ledger. They lived only in my memory and my eroding pride. I closed the folder, a thought clicking into place. I took out a blank notebook and began writing down each expense, the date and the reason. With each line, the illusion I held of being the perfect, cherished mother deflated. I didn't know my exact plan, but I knew nothing would ever be the same. That night, I didn't watch TV or check social media for party photos. I lay in bed and asked myself, if I stop paying, will I still be called Mom? I was about to find out. The next morning, I woke to autumn sunlight and a strange sense of calm. I brewed a pot of black coffee, the familiar smell anchoring me. As a former accountant, my habit of keeping meticulous records was about to become my strength. I opened my laptop and began downloading years of bank statements. The lines were cold and exact. February of last year, sent Mark $1,200 for a car deposit. May $3,000 for Sarah to invest in her salon. November, $850 for Lily's winter tuition, the granddaughter I'd never held because Sarah claimed to dislike the smell of my arthritis ointment. Each amount brought back a memory. Mark's worried call, Mom, my car's down. I can't get to work. Sarah's glossy-eyed plea at a cafe, Mom, if I don't get more capital, the salon will close. I had believed I was saving them. I scrolled on, the numbers relentless. I grabbed my notebook and logged each transaction. As my pen moved, my hand trembled not from age, but from anger. For years, I had turned myself into an ATM with a heart. When I finally totaled the amount, the number hit me hard, $47,600. That's what I had given in 5 years, excluding cash, gifts, and paid utility bills. I read the number over and over. I paced the living room, my eyes landing on a photo of Mark's high school graduation. My late husband, Richard, and I stood on either side of him. I remembered Richard whispering, "See, every hardship was worth it." What would he think now, seeing our son treat me like an outsider? My phone buzzed. It was Sarah. I let it ring. A text followed, "Mom, I'm just checking on your health." Call me when you're free. I laughed out loud. Sarah never called just to check on me. Checking on your health was a thin curtain over a bottomless need. I didn't call back. That afternoon at the grocery store, I paid for my small basket of essentials, the total under $30. I, who kept a receipt for eggs, had let tens of thousands slip away without so much as a thank you. Back home, I sat in my armchair, the hurt replaced by a simmering anger at my own leniency. I had let motherly love become a one-way contract. That night, I wrote one final line in my notebook. I'm not a mother anymore. I'm the family bank. And starting today, this bank is closed. With that, I felt a new current move through me, lighter but colder. I knew the next step wouldn't be easy, but I had finally faced the truth. The next morning, I went to the bank. Mr. Davis, the longtime account manager, smiled when he saw me, but his expression faltered when I set my thick notebook on his desk. "Good morning, Eleanor," he said. "How can I help you today?" I took a deep breath. "Mr. Davis, I want to cancel all automatic transfers to Mark and Sarah, and I want to set up a new, separate account that no one knows about but me." He looked surprised but seemed to understand. "Are you sure? Those transfers have been like clockwork for 5 years. I gave a small, wry smile. "That's exactly why I'm here today." He quickly typed and printed a thick stack of statements. I ran my hand over the pages, feeling the weight of the numbers. $1, $200, $3,000, $850, $4,000. An endless list. "Mr. Davis," I said softly, "do you remember when I rushed in to withdraw $5,000 for Mark? You asked if I was sure, and I laughed and said it was for family." He nodded. "I remember. I worried about you then." I closed my eyes for a moment. Today I'm more determined, but this time it's for me. I signed the cancellation form with a steady hand. He finalized the changes. "All set, Eleanor. No one can touch your accounts without your approval. I've also opened a new savings account for you. I strongly recommend you don't share the password with anyone, including family." I smiled. "Don't worry. I've learned a very expensive lesson." When I stepped out of the bank, the sun felt bright. I felt as if I had just put down a heavy burden. That afternoon, my phone rang nonstop. First Mark, then Sarah. I didn't answer. Texts flooded in. "Mom, I don't see the transfer." "Did you forget?" "Mom, we need money for the credit card bill." "Mom, please don't do this to us. You know we rely on you." I read each message but didn't reply. For the first time, I let the phone fall quiet. That evening, I drew a red line through each item in my notebook and whispered, "Enough." I remembered Sarah's sweet words when I paid for their new air conditioner. "Without you, we wouldn't know what to do." I once took pride in those words. Now I saw they were just a way to keep me in an endless loop of giving. I wrote one last line in my notebook. "The Bank of Eleanor is officially and permanently closed." I knew my children's reactions would be fierce, but I was ready for the fight. This time I wouldn't back down. The next morning, Sarah called, her voice tearful. "Mom, the credit card was declined. The house is about to be foreclosed. We thought you forgot the transfer." I took a sip of coffee. "I didn't forget, Sarah. I'm choosing not to send it anymore." A few seconds of silence, then she burst out, "You can't do that. We rely on you." I ended the call. Not even 10 minutes later, Mark called, his tone blunt and harsh. "Mom, what's going on? You know we have a loan payment due." I simply said, "I know, and I've decided to stop." He shouted, "What's wrong with you?" before I hung up. In the afternoon, Sarah appeared on my porch, her eyes red. "Mom, please don't do this. If we lose the house, Lily will have to switch schools. She's your granddaughter." My heart pinched at my granddaughter's name, but I remembered how for years I wasn't allowed to hold her. I pulled my arm from her grasp. "Sarah, if you care about Lily, learn to support your own family." Her face shifted, anger flashing in her eyes. As she stormed off, she yelled, "You'll regret this." The next day, Mark arrived, his jaw tight. "Mom, we need to talk." I stood in the doorway, blocking his entry. "We can't live without your support," he said. I cut in, "You're 35, Mark. At your age, your father supported a whole family without help." He scowled. "You think all we care about is money?" I answered softly. "Tell me, when was the last time you called just to ask how I'm doing?" He went silent, unable to answer, and left without a word. For the next 3 days, my phone was a constant barrage of messages about rent, credit card debt, and bank loans. I ignored them and instead took a walk, buying a warm loaf of bread from the bakery. The simple, friendly conversation with the clerk was a stark reminder of how long my interactions had been transactional. That night, a long text arrived from Sarah. "Mom, I'm sorry if I upset you, but we're really in a tough spot. I know you don't want your granddaughter to suffer." The words were gentle, but I recognized the familiar scent of manipulation. In the past, this would have sent me running to the bank. Now, I felt relieved that I had learned to stand firm. On Sunday, I went to church. The pastor's sermon on forgiveness struck a chord. "Forgiveness doesn't mean accepting abuse," he said. "It is when you let the burden fall from your shoulders." I sat there as tears streamed down my face, not for my children, but for myself, the woman who had let motherhood become a chain. That afternoon, Sarah called again, her voice sharp. "If you don't send money, we'll have to take action. Don't blame us." I pressed end, my heart steady. I knew things would get uglier, but I was ready. Just 2 days later, Mark's truck was parked in my driveway. Sarah stood beside it, arms crossed. "Mom, we need a serious talk," Mark began. Sarah cut in, "You're hurting this family. Olivia will suffer." I took a long breath. "If you truly care about Lily, learn to support yourselves. A grandmother can't raise a child for its parents." Mark's face twisted with anger. "You're selfish. You preach sacrifice, and now you're turning your back." I looked him in the eye. "No, Mark. I sacrificed for years. You never valued it. From now on, I simply won't." Sarah's sugary tone returned. "Mom, maybe you're confused. We just want you to be happy." I let out a rough laugh. "Happy? For years, you've taken every dollar I had. If that's love, my happiness is dirt cheap." Her face went pale and she hissed, "Fine. You'll face the consequences." As the truck pulled away, Mark gave me a look that was not a son's, but a stranger's. They had made me the enemy. The next day, I shared my situation with my pastor, who advised me to seek support and protection. His words echoed in my head. That afternoon, a letter arrived, an ultimatum signed by Mark and Sarah threatening legal measures to protect the family's interests. The threats had become a document. I called my old attorney, Mr. Thompson, who had handled my late husband's will. He was grave. "Eleanor, this is serious. Gather every piece of evidence. We must prepare." That evening, they returned, shouting from my lawn when I refused to open the door. "Mom, if you don't come out, we'll record a video showing you abandoning your family." I stood behind the curtain, my heart aching, but I didn't move. I hadn't caved. That night, I wrote in my notebook, "When they stop hiding, I see their true faces. Their words are knives. I'd rather take a real knife than live forever in fake sweetness." The next morning, I saw my neighbor of 10 years, Helen, watering her flowers across the street. We'd only ever exchanged pleasantries, but today, she looked at me with concern. I waved, and she crossed the street. "Helen, I heard a commotion here yesterday," she said gently. "Is everything all right?" I opened the gate and invited her onto the porch. I told her everything. She listened in silence, then gripped my hand. "Eleanor, you're not alone. I've been through the same thing. My son tried to have me declared incapacitated to take this house." She explained how her son had pressured her for money for a failed restaurant, which escalated to a guardianship petition. With a strong lawyer and neighbors willing to testify, she won. "I cried for nights," she admitted. "But I realized being a mother doesn't mean supporting your children for life. Love doesn't mean unconditional financing." Her words resonated deeply. I asked how she got through it. Of course, I felt guilty, she said. But every time they tried to manipulate me, I gathered more evidence. Let them perform. We'll record it. Just then, Mark and Sarah returned with a man I didn't recognize. I called Helen, who came right over. Mom, this is our legal advisor, Mark said. He just wants to talk. Standing beside me, Helen spoke up loud and clear. I'm the neighbor, and I've witnessed enough disturbances. If you keep harassing her, I'll call the police. The air shifted. Sarah yanked Mark's arm. Let's go. They left. Helen had shown me that just one witness was enough. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept deeply. I had found an ally. After Helen's intervention, a few days of quiet followed, but I knew it was temporary. Soon, another letter arrived, this one from a law firm. They claimed I showed signs of mental instability, requiring supervision to prevent financial risk, and hinted at the legal rights of direct heirs. They were building a case to force me to hand over control of my finances. I immediately took the letter to Mr. Thompson. He frowned. They're using the classic playbook, Eleanor. They want to paint you as a paranoid elder. We need to get ahead of it. He suggested an independent assessment by trusted specialists. It will be a second opinion to document your capacity and shut down their tactic. In court, these experts will be your wall. 2 days later, I met with Dr. Evans, a psychologist Mr. Thompson had arranged. She asked a long series of questions, and I answered each one clearly. When she asked about my monthly expenses, I recalled the total I had given my children, $47,600 over 5 years, because the number was carved into my memory. When we finished, she smiled. Eleanor, your mind is sharper than many younger people. I'll write a detailed report. No one can twist this truth. As we left, Mr. Thompson warned, they won't stop. Expect them to use psychological tactics. That night, the manipulative texts resumed. Sarah wrote about Lily calling for her grandma. Mark sent a message about driving past my house and seeing the lights on, claiming he regretted so much. These remorseful lines were just another tactic. The next day, I told Helen about it. They're trying everything, she said. 1 minute it's threats, the next it's sweet talk. Remember, the truth is what you've seen with your own eyes, not what they type in a text. She advised me to keep every message as evidence. I did, filing each one away. That afternoon, I received a call from a self-proclaimed social worker who said a report had been filed about my confusion. I calmly stated I wouldn't answer questions without my attorney present and hung up. I called Mr. Thompson immediately. Good, Eleanor, he said. This is their reverse psych move, trying to turn your caution into proof of paranoia. But now we have the independent assessment and witnesses. Don't be afraid. I felt like I had just sidestepped a trap. That night, Helen brought over pastries, and we sat on the porch. Every time they try to manipulate you, she said, you get more evidence. Let them perform. We'll record it. For the first time, I smiled a real smile. I wasn't just being hunted. I was a witness to my own truth. A week later, a thick envelope from the local court arrived. It was a petition to verify my civil competency. The plaintiffs were Mark and Sarah. The reasons listed were absurd. That I had recently spent money irrationally, isolated myself, and showed signs of paranoia. They, who had lived off me for years, were now painting me as a victim of exploitation. Mr. Thompson was prepared. Their weakness is fabricated evidence, he said. We'll expose it. He was right. Among their submissions was a medical certificate from a Dr. Peterson, claiming I had memory decline. A quick check revealed that Dr. Peterson had retired 3 years ago. The signature was a forgery. I went numb. They had forged medical records. Exactly, Mr. Thompson said firmly. That's our strike point. Submitting forged documents is a serious offense. In the days leading up to the hearing, I organized my evidence. Helen often came over to help, her presence a steady comfort. One afternoon, Mr. Thompson called, his voice electric. I just spoke with Dr. Peterson. He's willing to testify that the signature is fake. Their mask is about to fall. The first hearing finally arrived. I wore a light gray suit, feeling steady. Helen came to testify. In the courtroom, Mark and Sarah sat across the aisle, their faces tight. Their attorney leaned hard on phrases like mental instability and asset protection. When they presented the forged medical certificate, Mr. Thompson stood. He called Dr. Peterson to the stand, who stated clearly, "This is not my signature. I have never met Mrs. Eleanor. I retired in 2020. The courtroom fell silent. Mark went pale. Sarah's shoulders shook. The mask had been ripped off. Mr. Thompson continued, presenting Dr. Evans's competency report, 5 years of bank statements, and the threatening messages. Each piece of evidence landed like a hammer blow. I sat there as tears of release rolled down my cheeks. The truth was finally in the daylight. The formal hearing was on a gloomy Monday morning. I wore the navy blazer Richard had given me, my silver hair pinned neatly. Helen drove me. In the courtroom, I saw familiar faces from the neighborhood, their nods of support a silent comfort. The plaintiff's attorney repeated his claims, but this time, Mr. Thompson was ready. He called Dr. Evans, who confirmed my full competency. Then he called Dr. Peterson, who once again exposed the forgery. The courtroom buzzed. Harris then presented the 5 years of bank statements, pausing at the total of $47,600. "If anyone needs protection here," he said slowly, "it is Eleanor, a mother systematically exploited by her son and daughter-in-law." When the judge asked if I wanted to speak, I stood, my voice clear despite my trembling legs. "Your Honor, I am Eleanor. I have lived 72 years, and I never imagined I'd have to stand here to prove my competence. But today, I speak for all the mothers who have been exploited by their own blood. I am not crazy. I have just been silent for too long." The hearing adjourned, with the judge temporarily denying the guardianship request and noting the seriousness of the document forgery. As I left the courtroom, I felt both heartache and relief. I had never thought I'd see my own son's lies exposed in court, but I had never felt justice so close. On the day of the final ruling, the judge's decision was read in a steady, low voice. After reviewing all evidence, the court fully denies the petition for guardianship over Mrs. Eleanor. Furthermore, the court orders an additional investigation into the use of forged documents. The gavel cracked against the wood, and the months of dread finally lifted. Mr. Thompson whispered, "Congratulations, Eleanor. You won." But as I exhaled, I saw Mark stand and walk out of the courtroom without looking back. Sarah hurried after him. In that moment, I knew I had lost him, perhaps forever. Outside, strangers called me brave, and Helen hugged me tightly. This victory had come at a cost I could never mend. That night, my quiet house felt cavernous. I looked at an old family photo, my fingers tracing Mark's face. A legal victory couldn't fill the void in my heart. 3 days later, Sarah called, her voice cold. "You won. But from now on, don't expect to see Mark." I kept my voice even. "Sarah, tell Mark I never stopped loving my son, but I can't let him turn me into an endless wallet." She hung up. In the days that followed, Helen was my rock, her silent companionship a balm. Mr. Thompson called to check in. One morning, I saw Lily at the end of my walkway, but Sarah rushed up and pulled her away before she could speak. I watched them go, a tear sliding down my cheek. I had lost my granddaughter, too. That night, I wrote in my notebook, "I won a battle, but lost a piece of my heart." Justice offers protection, but it can't restore a mother's love once it's cracked. And yet, even in the hurt, a small flame of freedom glowed. I wasn't being forced anymore. I was no longer living in fear. After the trial, the local paper ran a story with the headline, "Elderly Mother Wins Case Against Son, a Wake-Up Call on Family Exploitation." Suddenly, my private pain was a public issue. Calls flooded in from reporters and other women with similar stories. One night, a woman's trembling voice on the phone told me her son had forced her to sign over her house. I realized I couldn't stay quiet. Helen and I started a support group at our church, Mothers Who Won't Be Silent. We shared our stories, and soon others did too. The group grew, becoming a community of women, and even some men, who had been exploited by their families. Mr. Thompson provided legal guidance, explaining how to spot abuse and seek help. We organized fundraisers and advocated for more resources for elder abuse. I, who had once curled up in fear, now stood before a crowd and said, "We are no longer silent victims. We have a right to speak." I had lost Mark, but I had found a new family bound by truth and courage. That summer, for the first time in decades, I lived by my own rhythm. I painted my walls a pale blue and planted roses in my garden. I took a trip to New Orleans, wandering old brick streets and listening to jazz. I started painting again, filling my studio with landscapes and portraits that felt full of life. I visited Richard's grave and whispered, "Richard, I did it. I kept what we built, and more importantly, I kept myself." I sometimes heard news of Mark and Sarah. They had downsized, and he was bouncing between jobs. I felt no hatred, only a distant sadness. I had crossed that river of loss and learned to put a period at the end. At 73, I know my time is limited, but every day means something new. I know how to say no. I choose joy for myself. I understand that real love is not bought. It is earned through respect and genuine care. From the rubble, I rebuilt a life for myself. And to anyone listening, remember, you have the right to speak. You have the right to live for yourself. It's never too late to begin again.